Hey everybody, it's your friend Carson coming back at you again. Decided to do a little follow-up video to my last video. I wanted to try to keep the videos a little bit shorter because it just seems like a little bit shorter is better. So I'm trying to keep them around 30 minutes at this point. But in the last video I mentioned that we might get to a demonstration about the same technique just scaled down for a hollow pendant. So I went ahead and made a couple hollow pendants the other day just to kind of show you guys that. And I mean, I don't know if you can kind of tell the scale, but it's probably about inch and a half at its widest point. I'm wearing one as well here. So figured we'd do that, make that into a quick little video. So there's that. The other thing I want to go ahead and demonstrate today is, again, in the last video when I did the Christmas ornament, I mentioned maybe some variations on the theme as far as the wrap and rake pattern. And one of the ways that one can vary that pattern is to rake one way and leave space in between the rakes, turn the blank around and rake down the other way. And so I made a couple of ornaments in that variation. So that's one of them, and you can see the difference here. So that's kind of what you get when you rake just one way, and that's what you get when you rake two different ways. This is the giveaway Christmas ornament. It's all cool. The colors on this particular camera don't show up super true, but I think the video quality was pretty good last time, so I decided again to just pre-record this, and then you can watch it in 1080p if you want. So this is the giveaway ornament. If you're not already entered, all you have to do is go to my last video and be a subscriber and drop a number between 1 and 300 in the comments, and that drawing is forthcoming. It'll be this Friday. So if you want a chance to win this Christmas ornament, that's all you have to do. Another piece of business is, speaking of giveaways, if you're not already following me on Instagram, go ahead and give me a follow. I'm at CAPGLASS Capglass on there as well. And I'm right hovering at almost 1,000 followers on Instagram. So that's really freaking awesome. If once I hit about 1,010 followers, I'll go ahead and do a giveaway on there as well. So that's exciting. And thanks everybody for your support as always. So anyways, there's a couple of other things. I got another really cool hat, and this hat I got at the Arizona State Fair. Is it Arizona State Fair? Yeah. And so anyways, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he does these airbrush designs, and it's pretty cool. So anyways, I didn't notice that it's a youth size hat, so it's a little small for my head. And you know, I just gotta wear that hat at a jaunty angle because you know that's just how I do. So anyways, we'll go ahead and get started with the demo. Again, this is just kind of a variation on the theme and a continuation of the same idea. But I did want to demonstrate it just in case somebody was wondering. I had a couple of questions, just some basic questions. Somebody asked me about the tubing that I was using. I'm using 25 by 4 Chinese heavy wall cobalt blue tubing. You know, most people that are familiar with borosilicate know kind of how tubing comes, but for those that don't, The tubing comes in 4-foot sections, so that's just one of those questions that a viewer had asked, and I said, well, let me go ahead and just answer that. The other thing is, last time I had my blanks already. I have one blank ready for the ornament demonstration, but I'll go ahead and do pull a point on camera here as a part of this demonstration, and the point that we'll pull will be for a hollow pendant. So anyways, we'll go ahead and get it started here. Got the cool hat on, you know. Yeah, so it's a little bit of a different vibe for me pre-recording these, but I kind of like it. I mean, I really like the live video format because, you know, people could kind of chime in and ask questions in real time. But the downside of that is there's not a lot of the video quality just isn't that good, and there's a lot of factors that, you know, maybe the Wi-Fi goes down. Sometimes the audio quality wasn't great, so I said, you know, let me just do this and kind of do more of a traditional type of a pre-recorded thing. And but I love the feedback that you guys are giving me, and you know, I think it's great, and thank you guys so much. I've been having some really interesting messages and conversations with people that are just getting started in the glass blowing field, and I think it's really wonderful that, you know, people are interested, people want to get involved in this industry, in this art form, and you know, it's a hard road to hoe. I'll be the first to say that, but it's a lot of fun, and if you get bit by the bug, then, you know, I feel sorry for you, because I know your pain. Anyways, so here's, I already have this point and pre-made. This is just the last little bit of a tube. And I'm going to go ahead and I'll score, I'll use my little carbide knife here, and I'll just put a little score mark in here to kind of give me a little bit of guidance as to where I want to melt this tube, so I don't walk all over this tube. So I want kind of a nice medium brushy flame here. And if you're new to working with tubing, there's a couple of things that you want to be aware of. One is that there will be condensation that can build up on the inside of a tube, and if you go directly into that flame like super hardcore, you run the risk of that tubing exploding on you. So, you know, be aware of that. If you're not sure, start way out here and give yourself a fighting chance. So what I'm doing now is I'm getting probably 1.5 inches of this into a nice orange glow, and it's moving around on me a little bit. I'm going to pull it out of the flame. I'm just going to slowly pull, let it stabilize. It's stabilizing, it's stabilizing, and I'm pulling, and as I pull, I just rotate it a little bit. Rotate it by thirds maybe. And then I'm going to go ahead and at this shoulder here, I'll go ahead and melt that off right there where the tube starts going into the point. Take a little dot from the tube end and place it right there on the end. I'll show you why I do that in a second. Warm that bottom up. Just give it a little puff. Nothing crazy. That end doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to look good. It's going to get torn off anyways, but, you know, giving it a little puff while it's still warm, there's nothing wrong with doing that. Just set that point aside for right now. The reason that I put a little dot on there is I want to be able to open up the end of this tube, and it's a trick that one of my teachers showed me. I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to run it, if I can show you, run it along this, like a runway. And when I do that, it's going to pop right off. And there you go. Popped right off. Give it a little flame polish. I'm going to set that aside. And we'll go ahead and begin our demo. So now we've got a section of tubing on a point. That's probably, just about 2 inches from shoulder to shoulder. You don't want it to be much bigger. For a hollow pendant, this one might actually be a little bit big, but I'll be able to go ahead and, I need some glass on either end that will become waste, to clean this tube up. And so that's, one of the reasons you don't want to go too small. So again, we'll just follow our same process as before. We're making the same exact style, basically, as the Christmas ornaments that I demonstrated in my last video, except this is a scaled down version for somebody to wear around their neck. Alright, so what I did just now is I put a nice heavy coat of silver fuming on that. You can see that. Take my stringer of color here. Go ahead and adjust my flame, and I'm going to start laying my stringer down. And there again, you can vary the width in between those lines of stringer that you lay down. If you wanted to trail the glass instead of laying stringers, you can do that as well. My stringer just broken, so I just popped it off there. You can vary the different colors for different effects. Boy, this stringer likes to break. Alright. Just continue on down this blank here. So I was thinking about a good topic for discussion. I got some really great news today. I have a friend of mine that was diagnosed with cervical cancer about, I want to say 9 months ago now, eight months ago. And it was this very rare form that was very aggressive, and by the time they diagnosed her, she was in stage 4 already. So it was really scary, and I mean, it's it's a life-threatening condition, right? And we, her friends, rallied around her, and one of the things that I, thought might help her is I did a collaboration marble with my friend Chad to give to her. It was a Monsters marble and a Buddha on the other side. I made a video about it, and that's also on my YouTube channel, so you guys check that out. Got to looking on Facebook today, and my friend Suze has basically beaten this cancer. She's got a few more rounds of chemo, but they said this thing is basically done. So was really excited to hear that, and I'm just so grateful that that's the case. So Suze, if you get a chance to watch this, I love you, girl, and you rock. And I know that chemo and fighting cancer can make one's life a living hell, and we're just so thankful to have you. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and do my my raking now, and on this one I'll do kind of like I demonstrated in the other video. So I'm just going to go one direction here. Now, I was talking a lot in my previous video about flame chemistry and how that's important, and the flame characteristics. And the other thing that I thought to mention this time was the relationship between the glass and the flame. So one of the things I watch out for is when I'm watching somebody's demo is how they're holding their body, how they're holding the piece that they're working on in relation to the flame. So right now I'm holding this blank, and there's kind of like a glancing blow. So I'm more or less in line with this flame, maybe off by 15 degrees. And not only am I'm more pushing the blank than I am pulling the rod. There's a little bit of both that goes on, but you know, I could probably push this blank more than I pull this rod. So there again, kind of part of expounding on the explanation. You know, for those folks that aren't very experienced glass blowers, maybe that helps a little bit. Okay. So here we are, if you guys can see it. I've got this blank is pretty warm. It's warm on that side, and it's cooler on this side, obviously. So I'm just going to kind of let this equalize and heat, let that warmer side cool down a little bit. Next step is I'm going to take, again, same process. I'll go ahead and spin this side off and clean up this termination. One of the things also I was thinking about as far as a topic for discussion is loving ourselves. And that's a pretty big topic. So I don't know how much I can actually talk about that in one video, but maybe there'll be multiple videos for that. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and we were discussing various things that was going on with him, and one of the things that came out of that conversation was that this idea that, you know, loving myself is very important, and it's a job that happens from the inside. You know, I've heard it said that the farthest distance I'll ever walk is from my head to my heart, and I found that to be true. The other thing that I know personally for myself is, you know, job one is taking care of myself and learning how to love myself. And when I do that, I'm a whole and complete person, and then that love can emanate from the inside out. But job one is learning how to love me. So that's super critical. Back to glass blowing really quickly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to heat up more or less in the middle, and I'm going to puff that out, and it'll allow space for this. When I sink the first side of this pendant, it'll allow space for that. So I'm not going to use my big flame on this probably. I don't need to. It's small enough. So yeah, so job one is learning to love myself and learning to take care of myself, and learning how to be kind to myself. You know, that's so critical. The way we speak to ourselves, and I've been in places within my own life where, you know, if somebody had talked to me like that, the way I was talking to me, it wouldn't have been a good scene, you know. So it's really, for me anyways, it's really important to watch that inner monologue, and to know that, you know, I'm one of God's kids just like everybody else, if you believe in that kind of thing. That's what I believe. And I'm not really any better or worse. And I'm worthy of love, and I deserve love, and I deserve to love myself. And that's true for everybody. All right, so now this is where we're at. Now, when I puffed it out the first time, I'm setting that diameter. That's as big as it's going to be. That's as small as it's going to be. I could, if I puffed it out more than I wanted to, I could sink it back down on itself at this point. But that's about the size that this is, and I think it's a good size. One consideration if you're making pendants is what I have found is that women generally like smaller pendants, and men will go for the bigger ones. So I found that if I make kind of a more feminine type of a pendant, maybe in pink and purple, or something like that. Not that guys don't like pink and purple, I mean, obviously, but that if I can make them smaller, usually if I'm at a show or something, the ladies will go for a smaller type of a pendant, and I haven't really been able to deduce why that is. I don't know, maybe it's like, oh, it's so cute, it's so small, who knows. But that's just what I found. So, kind of just learning. That's another part of the learning curve, right? Is learning who might want this, All right, so again, same process. I'm just sinking it back down on itself, and this will become one side of this pendant. Oh yeah, that's going to be pretty. You guys won't be able to see that quite yet. Here it comes. All right, same thing. I'm going to bring my flame down to a narrower flame, and I'm going to have to pop a hole dead in the middle of this thing. Okay. Now, if you guys noticed how long that took for me to pop that hole, the glass had cooled down, so I had to get it hot again. And this cobalt is pretty darn stiff. So I'm not going to make a super large hole for this one. Kind of more of a medium-sized hole. I'm going to go ahead with my blow tube. And I'm going to taper it down just a touch, just because I don't want to make a giant hole in the middle of this one. And this blow tube here is I think 12.5 millimeter outer diameter, so that can be a pretty decent size hole if you were to just match it up to the outer diameter. So I just kind of necked it down a little bit just now. All right, there again. Same exact procedure as the Christmas ornament. Coming out away from all this stressed out glass on the end that has cooled down as I was working on the other side. So learning to love yourself. I guess the next question would be, well, how do I do that? And that's a process in and of itself, I've found. I think as far as that goes, each individual has their own journey, and each person has their own, I guess you could say, demons or struggles, things that they might need to work on. I have found in my life that having a mentor or mentors really helps. I'm not a religious person, but I do consider myself to be spiritual. And for me, that spirituality has helped me a lot. It's helped me to learn to love myself. So there again, I'm coming in here on the other side of this blank. I've cleaned it up. Now I'm just giving it a nice, even, warm heat. I want a nice, even orange glow. I'm going to puff on it a little bit just to clear up any ball weight issues. And we're not quite at this shape at this point, but we're there. We're almost there. I mean, it's very close. So one of the things that I've also learned, I guess in glass and in life, is I have to give it its own time. You know, glass demands my patience and my persistence. And I think that life and, you know, learning to love oneself, it also demands patience and persistence, right? So maybe that ties in pretty well. So, and at this point, you can decide, do I want it to be more skinny? Do I want it to have kind of domed ends? Do I want the ends to be more or less flat? You could even turn this into a donut if you wanted. So there's lots of ways that you can go with this. This particular technique can be used to make sections of things. Maybe you're making a pipe, a heady rig or something like that. It's a hollow disc, so you know, there's a lot of places you can go with it. All right, so my next thing that I'm going to do is I need to place 2 holes. There's 2 holes for these. And what I want to do is I want to put the holes on the equator, and I'd say probably about 20 degrees apart, something like that, maybe 25 degrees. And the trick, there's a couple tricks to this. One is I'm gonna change my flame. I want a little bitty flame. And the other is I'm gonna create a thin spot for both holes before I pop one. So I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. Alright, so I started a spot right there. I'm going to come, again, probably about, I don't know, 20 degrees, 25 degrees away from it and start another one. So I'm just heating up one specific spot here. And I'm going to give it a little air. And you'll be able to see that wall push out. If you're a pipe maker, it's just like kind of like popping a carb, where you can kind of see that wall start to push out. I come back to my first hole here. Give it a little more. I'm gonna go ahead and pop this first one. If I want my hole to be bigger, all I have to do after I've popped it is to put it in the flame and blow, and it will create a bigger hole. Go ahead and try to pop this second hole here. Alright, so there I have my 2 holes. So for a hollow pendant, you can just run a string through one and then up the other side. Alright, last step of the process will be to putty up to the end. I'm leaving my flame super small, super, I mean, it's fairly, you know, it's a small little flame. And I want a nice light putty for this. You know, and if you're new to glass, one of the tricks that I've learned, or kind of one of the maybe the guiding principles, would be, you know, just I can slow down at any point. If I'm getting frustrated, if I'm struggling, I can just take my time. I'm not in a rush with this. I know I said I wanted my videos to be a little bit shorter. Right now, I think it looks like we're at 30 minutes, so that's more or less what I had intended for the whole video, but I guess this video is going to be a little longer. You know why? Because that's just what the glass wanted, you know. I have to give it its time, you know. So, alright, so I just cleaned up that little bit of clear that was on the end there. I'm just going to melt this little nipple end that I created from that blow tube. I'm having to blow out that hole there for that blow tube attachment point. And if I need it to fall in on itself, I'll just hold it down at an angle. So, you know, gravity is my friend here. Alright, and at this point I really don't have much of a good way of putting air into it. I could have not popped the second hole and been able to use my soffietta as I did in the previous video, but I find that if you just go slowly enough, that it's not really an issue. Alright, so I'm going to warm up a pair of tweezers here. Go into one of my holes, shock my putty. It snapped off pretty darn clean. Come in here with a little bitty flame, polish that little putty mark off of there. And there you have it, folks. That's that hollow pendant. Throw this in the kiln. Somebody had asked me what I run my kiln at, what my kiln cycle is. Generally when I'm working, I'll do prep work and I'll have blanks in my kiln ready, or I need a warm place to put pieces and parts if I'm working on a multiple section piece. And so right now that kiln is at between 1050 degrees Fahrenheit and 1060 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's gonna, I have it programmed to hold it there for the amount of time I am thinking I'm going to work this evening, plus a little bit. So if I plan on working 4 hours, I'll put it at like 4 hours and 30 minutes before it goes to its next step. There's a way that, you know, you can have it just hold temp and then push a button and then it'll run a program. This particular kiln, that's just the way I've run this one. And at the end of the night, after it's gone through that first step of, you know, holding for as long as I wanted it to, it will slowly ramp down, go down in temperature to 950 degrees over the course of about an hour. I think an hour and 15 minutes. It'll hold there for about 15 or 20 minutes and then it'll crash. I have found that as long as Boro stays at 1050 degrees thereabouts, for hollow stuff like this, 10-15 minutes. For marbles, I think they say 15 minutes per half inch or something. As long as that glass has the opportunity to get equalized in temperature, that second step of dropping it slowly to 1050, which is supposedly Boro's stress point, it's debatable whether that's actually necessary. I have crashed kilns plenty of times from, things have been soaking in there for 30 minutes at 1050 and just crashed it, and never really had a problem. I had a marble that I had made, and I crashed that kiln at 1050. Very basic marble, but it was my bouncing marble. And if you guys ever had a marble bouncing competition, all you do is you take a glass marble that you made, excuse me, and bounce it on concrete. And my bouncing marble, I don't know, I probably bounced it like literally 50 times before it had a chip, and it never cracked all the way through. So boro is really tough stuff. That particular shape of marble is, that sphere is very, it's tough. It's a very strong shape. And depending on, if there was a lot of work, intricate work inside of it, that might create stress. But that particular marble was just a little inside-out thing that I had done. All right, so I'm going to demonstrate one more ornament with the flipping and around technique. So I've got my blank here. That's about the last blank that we made was about 2 inches. This one's probably about 3.5, 3 to 3.5 inches. I'm going to throw some silver fuming on it. Hold your breath. Woo. Again, guys, if you don't have proper ventilation, just be very careful when you go to fume. Or maybe you shouldn't be fuming if you don't have proper ventilation. I'm not responsible. This is for instructional purposes only. So yeah, loving oneself, I think there's just a lot. There's a lot there. The other thing, kind of back to that topic, is this idea that the way I talk to myself. There was a poster once that said, and I think this is just kind of like an old proverb. It said, watch your thoughts, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your character. And then watch your character, it becomes your destiny. Or something like that. And I always thought that was interesting. So watching my thoughts and watching how I talk to myself. Good example is, I try my best never to tell myself that I'm no good, that I'm not worthy, that, I'm less than. I'll sometimes have those thoughts, but when those thoughts come, I just have to school myself to say, no, Carson, you're one of God's kids just like everybody else. And you're imperfect, but you're exactly where you're supposed to be right now in this moment. And for me, that's crucial. So I'm just about out of stringer here. I'm picking up little pieces of stringer. I'm due for a color order. So some of these stringers, the reason that they were breaking is that I'm basically out of this caramel color. So I had to pick up the little odds and ends like this that are finger burners at this point from my bench, gather them all up in a glob, melt them all down, and pull them back out. So anyways, caramel is one of those colors that I use it. It's a good one. It's one of the originals. Caramel or butterscotch, I can't remember. Either one, I think they're pretty much interchangeable to me. But it's a great color. It goes well with a lot of things, I think. It's nice and earthy. So anyways, what I'm going to do for this one is, instead of going right next to my previous line, is I'm going to come over a little bit, adjust my flame a little bit. I want it to be a little narrower. I'm going to give myself some space, and after I get done, I will show you guys what I'm talking about. And the other thing is, if I'm feeling down on myself, another part of learning how to care for myself has also been, if I am going to beat myself up, maybe I should pick up a feather and put down the bat. You know what I mean? So that, pick up, if I'm beating up on myself, I have to remember that, for one, I've never done this before. This is all new to me. I've never lived this long before. For two, I have to remember, I'm only human. I'm allowed to make mistakes. And that is completely okay, completely acceptable, and it's actually vitally important to my development as a human being. And if I don't make mistake number 5,243 or whatever, then I'm not going to learn lesson number 5,243. So the point is that if I make a mistake, maybe I can look back on it and say, well, where did I go wrong? And that's absolutely true in life, and it's true in glassblowing as well. Excuse me. Okay. Got a tickle in my throat. All right, so now what I'm going to do, this is where we're at. So on our other blank, we didn't leave that much space in between. So I'm going to come down this thing this way. So all I have to do that is to make myself a handle. I want to make a fairly decent handle. Watch this thing break off. This one's okay. Let it stabilize. I need to let it stabilize for sure. And I'm just going to come down the blank, going the opposite way, in between the lines that I have already made. And I have found that going slowly with this side is important. I don't want to throw off my my handle, my point end, by having too much excess heat running up that side of the blank. So instead of having a broader flame that I might do when I'm just raking down one way, I will do a smaller flame and just take a little more time with it. So maybe that's another trick for folks that might try this and struggle. All right, we're getting there, and I like this pattern as well. It kind of gives you like a feathery kind of a pattern. So, like you guys probably saw in the first part of this video. Go ahead and melt this handle off here, and I'll show you guys where we're at. So that's where we're at. if it'll focus for me. All right, and it's basically the same exact process as I showed with the pendant just now and with the previous video. So I'm going to take this blank, and you know, if you don't want it to have a spiraled swirled pattern, what you can do is you can pull this off and just pull it off to a point. That's another option. Just pull it directly off, instead of one way to do that I do it is I'll twist this one more than I twist this one. So that's got a little bit of a spiral to it. You guys can't see it. It's got a little bit of a spiral to it, but it really comes to a point, more or less. So I'm going to heat up 2/3 of this thing. Melt all these lines in. One thing that beginners might struggle with is really making sure that their lines are melted in. Speaking of different colors that you can use, there's learning curves to colors as well. And one thing I like about this particular color combination is that they're both fairly stiff. So they will more or less melt more or less at the same rate. Sometimes if you have a very stiff color on a clear tube, it's more challenging to get those lines melted in because the clear tube wants to move a whole lot, and the color that you put on there that's very stiff doesn't. So that's kind of where we're at. That's the shape we're in. And again, I'm going to come between the kind of the equator of this bulb and the end, and I'm going to just focus on sinking this end back in on itself. So I'm playing with this because I want the wall weight to kind of equalize and even out. And I want to have this, I'm setting my shape for the one side of this ornament at this point. So I'm going to puff it out, sink it back and puff it out just a couple of times to really get the shape that I want, and then to also to address any wall weight issues that I might be having. Okay, so that's where we're at. We'll go ahead and, again, same process. Boy, I'll tell you, next time, I apologize for all the coffee. Next time I'll bring a cough drop down here. The air in the shop right now is pretty dry. It's winter time, so sometimes when you got really dry air and a lot of air movement, just, it gives me that tickle in the back of your throat. I think attitude also has a lot to do with learning to love myself, and the extension of that, which is learning to love those around me. Um, trying to keep a positive attitude about my life and about life in general, and about humanity and all of those things really helps me to to see the good. Because if I'm struggling with seeing the good in people or then I'm probably also struggling in seeing the good in myself. Like, again, it's that inside out process. It starts from the inside. I have to realize too that while I'm not perfect, I have my strengths. I have my strengths. I have my strengths and I have my weaknesses, and I can focus on my strengths, right, and give myself credit for whatever job well done that I have done. That's also really important. And sometimes it's super basic. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. I don't have to win the Nobel Peace Prize. Sometimes it's as simple as, well, I reached out to somebody today and let them know that I cared about them, or let them know I was thinking about them. Or, maybe it's something like, I cleaned my bathroom today. I mean, as silly as that sounds, that's something that I did that was good for myself. And, and if I have a hard time with that, maybe I can imagine, a stadium full of people cheering me on. Yeah, he cleaned his bathroom. That's amazing. Yeah. Anyways, I think imagination is another really powerful tool that we have. And, sometimes if I'm struggling with seeing the good in somebody, or struggling with a personality, somebody's, maybe annoying me, or maybe I'm annoyed and they're not helping, whatever. One of the things that I've learned to do is I try to imagine that person as like a 4-year-old, and then I think about that 4-year-old, and what they would have been like, and it really helps me to kind of maybe understand, or at least find some empathy there, because we were all 4 years old at one point, and I think inside of every one of us, we have a little kid in there, some people, the inner child or whatever. I mean, that, I don't know, but we do, not only, like right now I'm 32 years old, but I'm also 21 years old, and I'm also 5 years old. You see what I'm saying? So sometimes, maybe it's boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife that we're having a hard time with. Maybe it's a parent, a friend, an acquaintance. Maybe I can imagine that person, as a 5-year-old that doesn't know what's going on, that might need some help. That might be scared. You know what I mean? Because chances are they are scared. Chances are they are struggling. I've learned that if somebody is giving me a hard time, or they're slighting me or whatever, that for them to treat me in such a way, that means they're hurting. They're suffering. So again, job one is for me to be okay with me, and that way nobody can hurt me. Okay, so that is what we came up with. It's pretty cool. A friend of mine was an EMT for a while, and he shared something that was really interesting. He said, you know, Carson, when you're in EMT school, they gave me a scenario. They said, you come up to the scene of an accident, and you see an overturned vehicle, and it's raining out, and there's, you know, somebody inside the vehicle trapped, and they're moaning, and you know, you can hear people screaming, and the question that they posed is, what's the first thing that you do in that situation? And the first thing they say to do in that situation is put your raincoat on. It's a rainy night. Put your raincoat on. And the point is that I'm not going to be able to help anybody if I don't first take care of what I need to take care of. You see what I'm saying? So put your raincoat on, you know. And I think about that sometimes, you know. Am I failing to do that? Am I failing to put my raincoat on? And I've gotten better about that over time, you know. In that way, and the point is not to be selfish, but the point is to make sure that I'm okay, so that I can go and help them people that are in the car and overturned and it's raining out, right? That one turned out pretty cool, guys. All right. Get this thing off of there. Shock that punny. Oh, that punny just jumped right off. It's cold in here. Polish that up. And there you have it, folks. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody again for watching. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe. Drop a comment. Give me some feedback. Let me know how you like these videos, or if you think I'm just full of it, that's fine too. Check me out on Instagram. Again, I'm close to doing a giveaway on there. So also, if you haven't gotten in on this one that's going on right now, make sure you go to that last video, drop a number between 1 and 300, and we'll do that drawing here in a couple of days. So thanks everybody for watching. Again, enjoy your holiday season. I hope it's been helpful. We'll see you next time.